I never imagined that the quiet hum of the hospital lights would become the soundtrack of my life. One moment I was standing in my kitchen, stirring soup, humming along to the radio. The next, my right arm slipped from the counter, my knees buckled, and the world twisted sideways like someone had ripped gravity out of the floor. They said I was lucky I didn't hit my head, lucky I was found quickly, lucky the stroke didn't take more. I didn't feel lucky, I felt abandoned, because when I woke up, gasping through the fog in my brain, the first thing I saw wasn't my husband's face. It was the nurse adjusting the IV drip. I didn't know then that while I lay there fighting for breath, my husband was boarding a plane to the Maldives. They didn't tell me right away. They waited until I could form sentences, until my heartbeat stopped skipping like a broken drum. My sister, eyes swollen, sat beside me, twisting the strap of her purse. She tried to smile, but it cracked at the edges. She kept looking at the door, as if hoping he'd suddenly appear with flowers and apologies. He didn't. When she finally told me he left, the words slid into my chest like a knife dipped in ice. Not for business, not for family, but for a vacation he had secretly planned. A reset, he'd said, in the note he left on the kitchen counter. A reset from what? From me? From our life? From the vows he made and so easily tossed aside the moment I became inconvenient? The doctor said stress was dangerous for my recovery, so everyone tiptoed around my emotions like they might trigger another stroke. I hated it. I hated the softness in their voices, the pity in their eyes. I hated that my own body betrayed me, that my speech slurred when I was tired, that my fingers trembled when I tried to hold a pen. I hated that the man who promised to love me in sickness and in health decided sickness wasn't part of the deal. At night, when the hallway quieted and the machine settled into a steady rhythm, I replayed every argument, every distance that had grown between us. I wondered if the signs were there long before the stroke, tiny cracks I ignored because I believed love could glue anything together. I remembered the nights he came home late, smelling of cologne he didn't wear, the way his phone never left his pocket, the soft, secret smiles he thought I didn't notice. Maybe the stroke didn't break us. Maybe it just revealed what was already shattered. But lying there in that sterile room, I realized something else. I wasn't done. My life wasn't over. My voice might waver, my hands might shake, but my mind was still sharp beneath the fog. And anger, cold, focused anger, cut through the weakness like a blade. I started practicing my signature again, over and over, hundreds of times. The nurses thought it was therapy. They didn't know I was preparing for something else, something bigger, something that had nothing to do with rehab and everything to do with survival. Because if he could run to paradise while I learned how to walk again, then I could rewrite the story of my life, literally. The physical therapist worked me hard. I forced myself harder. Each step felt like dragging my legs through wet cement. My chest burned, my vision blurred, but every time I wanted to give up, I pictured him on a white sand beach, laughing, drink in hand, while I lay here fighting for breath. That image fueled me more than any doctor's encouragement ever could. Late one evening, when the sky outside had turned the colour of bruised lavender, I received a text from him, one line, no apology. "Hope you're feeling better. We'll talk when I'm back." We'll talk. As if we were discussing groceries, as if the life we built wasn't crumbling, as if I hadn't nearly died. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I deleted the message, not because it hurt, but because it was useless. He had already spoken louder with his actions than any words he could send. The next morning, my lawyer visited. My sister arranged it after seeing my determination. I told him I wanted to make changes. A new will, new directives, new beneficiaries. Everything that once went to my husband would go somewhere else, somewhere it mattered. He tried to hide his surprise, but the gleam in his eyes told me he respected my resolve. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. I nodded. "I almost died," I whispered. "But I woke up, and now I'm wide awake." The stroke took my strength, but it gave me clarity. and clarity can be a weapon. As the lawyer laid the papers in front of me, I felt a flicker, small, fragile, but real. Power. For the first time since collapsing in my kitchen, I felt in control. My hand trembled as I lifted the pen, but I pressed it to the page anyway. My signature wavered, imperfect and jagged, but it was mine, my choice, my rebirth. I didn't know then that rewriting my will would be the first domino in a chain of events that would expose secrets darker than I ever imagined. Secrets that would not only destroy my marriage, but threaten my life all over again. I thought signing those papers would give me peace, but instead it felt like I had cracked open a sealed room full of secrets no one wanted me to find. After the lawyer left, I sank into my pillow, wired and exhausted, staring at the door as if my husband might suddenly walk in, ashamed and apologising, ready to be the man I once trusted. But he didn't come. Only nurses drifted in and out, their smiles polite, their hands cold, asking questions I barely heard. I kept answering, "I'm okay," even when everything inside me felt scraped raw. On the third day after rewriting my will, my sister brought my laptop and charger. She placed them gently beside me, like she was handing over a truth too heavy to carry herself. "You should probably see what he's been doing," she whispered. She didn't need to explain. I already feared the answers. When she left and the room fell quiet, I opened the laptop with trembling fingers. I logged into our shared cloud, the safe place we used for travel plans, budgets, memories. But the first thing I saw wasn't a budget sheet or an old holiday video. It was a new album titled Maldives Reset. My heart clenched. I clicked. The first photo loaded 1 pixel at a time, as if the universe wanted to soften the blow. But when it appeared, the truth slammed into me. My husband lay in a hammock between 2 palm trees, sunlit and relaxed, and resting against him was a young woman I'd never seen. She looked at him with an ease I hadn't felt in years. My hand jerked from the touchpad. I wanted to slam the laptop shut, but something twisted and compelled me to keep going. I scrolled through the photos, him laughing with her, holding her waist in the ocean, toasting drinks at candlelit dinners, the two of them wrapped in each other like they'd been a pair forever. He looked lighter than I'd ever seen him, as if leaving me behind had lifted some invisible burden. Hurt burned through me, but underneath the pain was something colder, clarity. Then I reached the final image, an email screenshot. Subject line: Updated will and beneficiaries. I opened it. My husband had rewritten his will as well, and the stranger in the photos had a name, Emily Hart. Highlighted beside her name were the words, primary beneficiary. A chill spread through me. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning a future with her, financially, legally, permanently. I scrolled further into the email thread. Their trip wasn't spontaneous. It had been booked months before, while I'd still believed we were mending the cracks in our marriage. They'd chosen anniversary packages, ordered couples massages, and reserved private beach dinners. Buried in the reservations were messages between them, full of plans and promises, calling their trip the start of a clean break. The humiliation hit me harder than the betrayal. How long had I been blind? How many people had known the truth before I did? A sharp knock at the door snapped me from my spiral. I slammed the laptop shut, wiping my face quickly, even though I wasn't sure whether I'd been crying. A nurse entered with a man in a dark suit. He carried himself with the stiff politeness of someone who had rehearsed bad news 100 times. "Mrs. Miller?" he asked. I nodded, tense. "I'm Daniel Ross. I work with your husband." His eyes drifted to the machine beside me, then returned to mine. "Do you feel well enough to talk?" My pulse kicked up. "What's this about?" He hesitated, glancing at the nurse, then stepped forward. "Something came up at the office, something I thought you should see." He opened a leather folder and slid a stack of papers in front of me. It was an email chain printed in black and white, the top message, bearing my husband's name. Subject line: Contingency plan. My vision tightened as I read. Phrases jumped out like shards of glass. If she doesn't pull through, expedite the insurance payout, beneficiary transfer. Emily will oversee next steps. A cold wave washed over me. "What is this?" I whispered. Daniel exhaled slowly and sat down. "Your husband requested a contingency plan in case you didn't survive your stroke. Some of us found the timing concerning, especially considering the speed of the financial changes." My fingers stiffened around the paper. "He planned for me to die," I said. It wasn't a question. Daniel's jaw tightened. It appears he was preparing for that possibility, aggressively. The heart monitor betrayed the panic rising in me. "So if I had died," I said, the words scraping out, "he would have collected everything and she would have stepped into my place." Daniel swallowed. "Yes." A hollow laugh escaped me, harsh, bitter. "And now that I'm alive?" He looked at me for a long moment, his face darkening with something dangerously close to fear. "Now," he said carefully, "I think you've become a problem he didn't plan for." The room went cold around me. For the first time since the stroke, the fear wasn't about my health. It was about survival. Someone who benefits from your death rarely celebrates your recovery. And my husband had already built a life that required me gone. The moment Daniel left, the room felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in to listen to the panic pulsing through my veins. I stared at the papers he'd shown me, every word slicing deeper than the last. My husband had planned for my death so neatly, so efficiently, that it felt less like a contingency and more like a wish. I tried to breathe slowly, but my lungs felt tight, like they'd been filled with cold smoke. I pressed the call button, not for help, but for space, for someone to move the air around me so I didn't suffocate. But when the nurse walked in, cheerful and brisk, I plastered on a calm I didn't feel. I couldn't trust anyone, not anymore. I lay still, pretending to rest until she left again. Then I unlocked my phone and opened the last message he had sent. "Hope you're feeling better. We'll talk when I'm back." My fingers shook. I typed a reply, then erased it. Why warn a man who already wished I were dead? Instead, I opened our bank app. I scanned through transactions until one caught my eye. An international wire transfer sent the morning of my stroke. It wasn't to a resort. It wasn't to a travel agency. It was to a private account belonging to someone named Hart. My stomach dropped. Emily Hart. He wasn't just preparing a future with her. He was investing in her. I scrolled further, heart pounding. More transfers, more money flowing out of our accounts than I'd ever realised. Tuition payments, boutique purchases, spa, visits, hotel reservations spaced throughout the last year. I had been funding her life without knowing she existed. Rage trembled through me so violently I had to put the phone down. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the IV from my arm and run until my legs gave out. But the truth was colder and heavier than anger. Someone who plans your exit doesn't wait patiently for nature to do the work. If he needed me gone, he wouldn't leave it to chance. He wouldn't let survival get in the way of his carefully designed future. I thought of the fall, how sudden it was, how I felt light-headed hours before it happened, how the world spun a little too easily that morning. Had it really been a stroke? Or had he helped push me toward the edge? Shame shivered through me at the thought, but fear wrapped around it like steel. I remembered the soup I was stirring. He had made it for me, insisted I eat before he left for work. I tasted it twice before everything blurred. My hands went cold. I fumbled for my phone again, opening the hospital portal, searching for test results with frantic urgency. My toxicology report was clean, but that didn't reassure me. Not everything leaves a stain doctors recognise, and a man who plans finances down to every detail doesn't make amateur mistakes. I forced myself to breathe, think, survive. The nurse returned, mentioning dinner trays and medicine schedules, but her voice floated around me like background noise. My mind was racing too fast. If he came back from the Maldives and found out I changed my will, he wouldn't smile politely. He wouldn't negotiate. He'd see everything slipping away: money, reputation, the life he was building with his new partner. And men like him don't lose quietly. I needed protection. But protection meant exposing everything, and the thought of telling my story, of admitting I married a man who might have tried to kill me, felt like swallowing glass. I pulled myself upright, trembling with the effort. My therapist had told me movement helped with clarity. She didn't know it also helped with terror. I shuffled to the window, gripping the rail for balance, staring at the parking lot below. Normal life moved on. Cars coming and going, people stepping into the cold evening air without realizing how easily the ground can vanish beneath you. I wondered how many women stood where I was now, alive by accident, clueless that the person they loved considered them disposable. A knock broke my thoughts. My sister slipped in quietly, eyes scanning my face. "You look pale," she said softly. "What happened?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. I couldn't drag her into this storm, not yet. "Just tired," I whispered. She watched me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but if something's wrong, I need you to tell me. Don't protect anyone who wouldn't protect you." Her words hit harder than she meant them to. After she left, I sat alone in the darkening room, the sun disappearing behind clouds that looked like bruises across the sky. I reached for my phone again and typed a message to Daniel. "I need the full file," I wrote, "everything you didn't show me." A minute passed, then 2, then 3. Finally, 3 dots appeared. They blinked, vanished, blinked again. "Not safe to send," he replied. "He checks company servers. We need to meet." My throat tightened. "When?" I typed. His response came fast. "Tonight." I looked at my trembling hands. Leaving the hospital was against every recovery rule. But staying here, vulnerable and isolated, suddenly felt far more dangerous. I tucked the papers under my blanket, slid my phone into my pocket, and stared at the door. Tonight, I would learn the truth, or die trying. Getting out of the hospital felt like slipping through shadows. Every hallway looked longer than it should, every floor tile louder beneath my unsteady steps. I wrapped my sweater tight around me, hiding the trembling in my hands as I moved toward the elevators. No one stopped me. No one questioned why a patient recovering from a stroke was walking out alone after visiting hours. That scared me more than anything else. Vulnerability is easiest to exploit when no one thinks you're worth watching. Outside, the night air hit my face like a slap, sharp and cold enough to wake every nerve in my body. The hospital lights glowed behind me, sterile and distant, as I walked toward the far end of the parking lot where Daniel said he'd be waiting. Each step felt like I was moving deeper into a dangerous story I didn't know how to survive. When I saw a black sedan idling near the exit, my heart climbed into my throat. The driver's window rolled down, revealing Daniel, tense and scanning the area as if expecting someone to jump out of the shadows. I pulled the door open, sliding into the passenger seat, my pulse thudding so loudly I felt it in my ears. "You shouldn't have left alone," he said the moment I shut the door. "He has contacts everywhere." I stiffened. "Contacts?" Daniel nodded, eyes locked on the road as he pulled out of the lot. "Your husband isn't just some ambitious business type. He's connected to people who make problems disappear quietly. Money opens doors and closes them around whoever he chooses." A cold shiver spread through me. "Why are you helping me?" His jaw tightened. "Because he crossed a line. He asked me to process documents that were unethical, even criminal. And because my sister went through something similar, she didn't survive." The weight of his words pressed into me like a hand on my chest. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope, dropping it onto my lap. Everything he tried to hide is inside: bank transfers, internal memos, messages he deleted, and something else. My fingers hovered above the envelope. "Something else?" Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "Proof your stroke wasn't natural." My breath caught. How do you know?" He inhaled sharply, as if steadying himself. Your husband sent a private request to an associate for a compound that causes dizziness and can trigger strokes in vulnerable people. He said it was for a relative, but the timing matches, and so does the delivery confirmation. My stomach rolled. My skin felt too tight for my body. He tried to kill me, I whispered, voiceless and hollow. Daniel didn't soften. And he may try again now that you're rewriting everything he counted on. Tears stung my eyes, but none fell. Fear was drying me out from the inside, leaving me brittle and breakable. We turned onto a quiet street, empty houses lined with sleeping windows. Daniel parked under a flickering street lamp and turned toward me. There's more you need to hear, but not here. Someone followed me earlier. We don't know who's watching. My fingers clutched the envelope. Where are we going? He hesitated. Somewhere safe. But before he could start driving again, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his face went ashen. What? I asked. What's wrong? He swallowed hard and turned the phone so I could see the message. It was from an unknown number. A grainy photo filled the screen, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. It was me, leaving the hospital minutes ago. The message beneath it was a single line. Bring her back. Now. My blood iced over. He knows, I whispered. Daniel locked the phone, his expression suddenly iron. We're going. But as he shifted the car into drive, headlights exploded in the rearview mirror. A dark SUV turned the corner too fast, engine roaring as it accelerated toward us. Get down! Daniel shouted. Instinct took over. I ducked, covering my head as the SUV screeched to a stop behind us, doors flying open. I heard footsteps pounding toward the car, heavy and fast. Daniel slammed his foot on the gas, the sedan jerking forward so violently I hit the dashboard. The SUV lunged after us, tyres screeching. Who are they? I cried. Daniel's grip on the wheel was white-knuckled. People who get paid to fix problems. The sedan tore through the quiet neighbourhood, weaving between parked cars, the SUV gaining speed behind us like a predator closing in. I felt the world tipping, my pulse pounding like a drum in my throat, every bump in the road rattling my weakened body. Hold on, Daniel warned. He swerved sharply onto a narrow alleyway, the tyres scraping against the curb. The SUV followed, its headlights flooding the interior like a spotlight searching for my fear. We can't outrun them, I gasped. Daniel exhaled through his teeth. Then we make them lose us. He accelerated toward the far end of the alley, where a busy main road shimmered with traffic. Just as the SUV lunged forward, Daniel cut, the wheel hard, fishtailing onto the street. Horns blared, cars swerved. The SUV tried to follow, but clipped the side of a truck and spun out, metal screaming against metal. We sped away into the night. Minutes later, Daniel finally slowed, breath shaking. You're not safe, he said. Not anywhere he can find you. My voice trembled. Where am I supposed to go? He looked at me, the streetlights catching the fear in his eyes. Somewhere he'll never think to look. He paused, then added quietly, and before morning comes. The city blurred past us in streaks of neon and shadow, like the world was melting into one long warning I couldn't outrun. Daniel drove in tight, sharp movements, scanning every mirror, every intersection, every passing car, as if danger could spill from any direction. My heart hadn't settled since the SUV rammed into the truck. It still hammered against my ribs like it wanted to claw its way out. He kept repeating that we didn't have long, that we needed to disappear before whoever was following us regrouped. I clutched the sealed envelope against my chest, terrified it held the power to end me if it fell into the wrong hands. Where are we going? I asked, voice barely more than a cracked whisper. Daniel didn't answer at first. He kept driving until the glow of the city faded behind us and empty stretches of road swallowed the night. Finally, he said, A safe house. My sister used it once when she was trying to leave her husband. She didn't make it, but the house is still there, Remote, unmarked, no digital trail. My throat tightened. Will they know about it? He shook his head. He may be powerful, but he doesn't know everything. His certainty felt like the thinnest shield between me and the nightmare hunting me. We drove for over an hour, the silence thick and suffocating, broken only by the sound of tyres humming against asphalt. With each mile, my fear morphed into something sharper, an awareness that everything I once believed about my life was a lie. My husband, the man I slept beside for 9 years, had not only betrayed me, but calculated my absence like a financial transaction. Every detail of my death had been prearranged and filed away neatly. I was never a wife to him. I was an asset, replaceable, erasable. As the realization settled, something inside me hardened. I wasn't just running to stay alive, I was running to expose him, to ruin him, to make sure the world knew what he was before he buried me for good. The road eventually curved into darkness, thick enough to smother the headlights. Pine trees rose high on both sides, their branches clawing at the sky like bony fingers. Daniel slowed, guiding the car down a dirt path that barely looked like a road. Gravel crackled under the tyres. A sliver of dread slid down my spine. Every horror movie started with a path like this. But then a dim cabin appeared through the trees. Weathered wood, a sagging porch, one flickering light above the door. It looked abandoned, forgotten by time, perfectly invisible. Daniel parked beside it and turned off the engine. We sat in silence as the night pressed in around us. I felt the weight of everything building in my chest, a storm with no place to go. "We'll stay until morning," he said quietly, "then we'll figure out the next step." "What if they find us?" I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time fear cracked through his calm. "Then we run again." The chill outside wrapped around me the moment I stepped out of the car, the kind of cold that seeped straight to the bone. The woods were deathly still. No birds, no wind, just the heavy, smothering quiet of isolation. Daniel unlocked the cabin, flicking on a single dim bulb that cast long shadows across the dusty floor. The place smelled of old wood and abandonment, but it was shelter, and right now, shelter was survival. I sat at the rickety table and finally tore open the envelope. Papers spilled out, photos, receipts, bank statements, internal emails marked confidential, and a document with a title that made my stomach flip, Patient Stability Projection Report. I skimmed it, hands trembling. It was a medical evaluation. My medical evaluation, dated 2 weeks before my stroke. Attached was an analysis of my stress levels, work hours, and symptoms I hadn't even reported. Then a highlighted section hit me like a punch. Prognosis: patient likely to experience a medical event within 8 to 12 weeks without intervention. And beside it, handwritten in my husband's handwriting, accelerate timeline. The room tilted. I gripped the table to stay upright. Daniel watched me carefully. "There's more," he said. I forced myself to keep reading. The next document was a communication between my husband and a private clinic overseas. They discussed a treatment plan for a woman who wasn't me, Emily. The plan included fertility treatments, private counselling, and luxury housing for an extended stay, all scheduled to begin the week after his expected bereavement period. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. The world blurred for a moment. Grief, anger, and disbelief collided inside me with such force that I couldn't breathe. "He built a life without me," I whispered, "before I was even gone." Daniel nodded grimly. "He didn't plan for you to survive. Your recovery ruined everything he set up." Tears burned behind my eyes, but refused to fall. I couldn't afford weakness. Not anymore. I sorted through the rest of the papers, each one revealing a piece of the web he'd spun around my life. Insurance policies, signed authorizations, asset transfers, hidden accounts, every step designed to cut me out, silence me, erase me. My fingers froze when I reached a small photograph tucked between the pages. It wasn't of Emily. It was of me, standing in my kitchen, taken through the window. My blood ran, cold. Daniel leaned forward. "That wasn't in the company files," he murmured. "Someone stalked you, someone close to him." The cabin felt suddenly smaller, the walls pressing in, my breath turning shallow. "So he's been watching me," I whispered. "Long before the stroke." Daniel exhaled. He needed to know when the timing was right. I pressed a hand to my mouth, trying not to scream. My life wasn't falling apart. It had been dismantled piece by piece, planned, watched, predicted. And tonight, for the first time, I understood something horrifying. If he had gone this far to ensure my death, he wasn't finished, not even close. I sat frozen in that dim cabin, the single bulb humming above me like it knew the truth before I did, like it had seen women break here before, praying the darkness had answers their lives no longer held. My hands shook as I held the photo of myself in the kitchen, my last ordinary moment before everything shattered. Someone stood outside that night. Someone watched me stir soup while my husband planned the precise hour my life would end. My lungs tightened until breathing felt impossible, and for a second I thought another stroke was coming, a cruel echo of everything he had designed for me. But then Daniel's hand landed gently on my shoulder, grounding me back into the present. "We'll bring him down," he said, a quiet promise that flickered like a candle fighting the wind. I wanted to believe him, but the woods outside felt too still, too silent, like the world was holding its breath. "There's only one way out of this," I whispered. "We expose him before he reaches me." Daniel nodded, but there was something in his eyes, something tense, cautious. "There's one more thing," he said. "I didn't want to show you until you were ready." My chest tightened. "Show me." He pulled a folded document from his jacket and placed it in front of me. I opened it slowly, bracing myself for another blow. It wasn't a bank statement, not an email, not an insurance policy. It was a contract with a private investigator, hired by my husband, dated 3 months before my stroke. The description was chilling in its simplicity. Surveillance, behavioural analysis, vulnerability reporting. My blood ran cold. "He studied me," I whispered, "like I was a target," Daniel finished, "and he paid good money to learn your habits, routines, and moments of weakness." I scanned the pages, horrified as I read the investigator's notes. Times I was home alone, days I skipped meals, nights I took sleeping pills, hours I cried in the bathroom, believing no one could hear me. He knew. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every quiet, fragile moment. And then I found the line that broke something deep inside me. "Client requested prediction of optimal window for medical collapse." My throat closed. Daniel swore under his breath. "They calculated it," I whispered, the words trembling. "They watched my life like a countdown." My vision blurred as tears finally slipped free, carving hot paths down my cheeks. "I thought the stroke was fate," I murmured, "but it was scheduled." Silence thickened between us, heavy and suffocating. Then from outside something cracked, a branch snapping sharp and deliberate. Daniel's eyes flew to the door. His hand slid to the small handgun tucked beneath his jacket. "Do not move," he breathed. My pulse surged painfully. The night pressed tighter against the cabin walls. Another sound, a soft crunch of leaves, slow, measured, coming closer. My husband's men had found us. Daniel killed the light. Darkness swallowed us whole. My breath came shallow, quick, loud in my own ears. Footsteps circled the cabin, slow as death itself. A shadow passed by the window. My heart thrashed. A second shadow followed. Then a low voice whispered, "She's inside!" My body went cold. A loud crash shattered the silence, the back door splintering open. Daniel grabbed my wrist. "Run!" The word was barely audible, but it shot through me like electricity. We bolted toward the front door, Daniel throwing it open as heavy boots thundered into the cabin behind us. The freezing night air hit my face as we sprinted into the woods, branches whipping against my skin. My legs screamed from the strain, but terror pushed me forward, faster than my recovering body should have allowed. Behind us, flashlights cut through the darkness. Voices shouted. Someone fired a gun. A tree trunk beside me exploded in a shower of bark. I stumbled, but Daniel yanked me up, dragging me through the undergrowth. "Just a little farther," he gasped. "Keep going." My breath tore through me, each inhale sharp and burning. We reached a slope, the ground dropping steeply. Daniel pulled me toward it. "We slide, then run." "We'll break our necks," I choked. "Better than letting them break it for us," he snapped. A flashlight beam swept across the trees. No time. We dove down the hill. The earth rushed beneath us, cold and brutal. Rocks sliced my palms, branches clawed at my clothes. My body twisted and tumbled until finally I crashed into a patch of frozen leaves, breath knocked out of me. Daniel landed beside me with a groan. Voices erupted at the top of the hill. More beams cut across the slope. We scrambled to our feet, pain screaming through my bones. "This way," Daniel panted, pulling me toward a darker patch of woods. "There's a service road. If we reach it, we can—" He stopped. His whole body went still. I followed his gaze. A figure stood ahead of us, half hidden by trees. Not one of the men, someone taller, broader, familiar. My blood turned to ice. It was my husband. He stepped forward slowly, as if savouring the moment, a cruel smile curving his lips. "You should have stayed dead," he said softly. "It would have been easier for everyone." My knees weakened. Daniel raised his gun. My husband laughed, a cold, echoing sound that hollowed out my chest. "You think you're walking away from this?" he asked. "You think anyone will believe you?" His eyes locked on mine. "You were supposed to die." The woods spun around me, the ground tilted. But something inside me, something fierce, something reborn, rose through the terror. My voice came out steady. "Not tonight." His smile faltered. A single blast tore through the darkness.